Hey, courageous school leaders. Welcome to Lead Beyond Limits, the space where school leaders like you gain unfiltered insights from educators, uncover the hidden barriers holding your staff back, and get practical strategies to lead with confidence. If you're ready to tackle the real challenges in your schools and create the clarity your team needs to thrive, you're in the right place. Let's dive in and get to work.
Good evening, everybody. It is a marvelous Monday. Thank you all for tuning in or catching the replay. Please let me know if you can hear me by giving me a thumbs up, giving us a thumbs up. I want to make sure that our sound is clear. And I have the privilege this evening to introduce to you a colleague. She's a sister in so many ways, right? She's a sister because we're from the same neighborhood in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. She's a sister because we're sorority sisters, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. And she's a sister in education, right? So we are connected in several ways, on several different levels, and I've had the privilege to get to know Dr. Danielle Green through an organization that we went through together for principal leadership. And so I'm so excited to welcome her. But before I introduce her, I just want to welcome you all back to Lead Beyond Limits. I want to take the time to say thank you for tuning in and for actively participating in the discussions, giving me feedback after the show, during the show. Everything that you do makes this live series better and stronger. And my goal for doing this is to provide the support and information for school leaders from lenses of people who are in leadership or are impacted by leadership in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's a cafeteria worker, a teacher, a counselor, a coordinator, it doesn't matter what role you play. Hearing how your leadership is impacting their work is critical for you to be successful. That said, I'm introducing Dr. Danielle Green with us this evening to share her expertise. She has a list. Let me tell you something, y'all. This sister is about the business, okay? When we're talking about a scholar, she is a scholar in every way, shape, and form. I have had the privilege of hearing her speak and provide workshops at sorority conferences and things of that nature, and she knows her business. So please, if you have not, make sure that you download the Lead Beyond Limits Reflection and Action Guide that goes along with this series, because the information that you get here is really for you to think and plan moving forward as a leader. So make sure you have that. If you do not have it, send me a direct message and I will send you the link so that you can download that guide. It is absolutely free and really a great tool to help you plan moving forward. Enough of me talking. I want to introduce Dr. Danielle Green. Thank you so much, Dr. Danielle, for being with us today. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you have a lot going on.
Not as much as you, Dr. Tamia, because so we know, we're just doing what we are purposed and destined to do. And so when you're walking in your purpose and you're walking in your destiny, heavy is the weight to those who wear the crown, and to whom much is given, much is required. And so when you are blessed with the opportunity to lead and serve, your hands are never light. There's always something to be done. And so thank you for this opportunity to share this virtual stage and platform with you. Thank you for the collaboration and being a sister of bringing other Black and brown women to your stage and to your platform to share our experiences in this educational leadership journey. I am truly honored to be here, and I'm so appreciative of you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate those kind words. Thank you. So tell us a little about yourself and what you do, Dr. Danielle. What do you do?
So, in preparing for this, I was reflecting some. This is year 28 in public education for me.
Wait, pause. Can we get a round of applause for that? Because, honey, educators are dropping like flies. So thank you so much for your commitment.
Yeah, 28 years. 19 of those 28, I've been in administration in
Mm,
some type of leadership capacity. That's gone from being a staff developer to an assistant principal to doing the resident principal program pipeline. We've done new leaders together. So
yep.
having that unique experience to being able to start up my own school, my own transformational school, where I focused on 15 to 21-year olds, overaged, under credit. 85% of my students were parents, had either had experience with the juvenile or adult system, and being
Mm,
able to, within a 2-year time frame, have a 100% graduation rate. And so having
yes.
that type of experience. And so now I'm in the community school facilitator space, right, which is a very unique dynamic to be in. And I'm so excited to be in this space because it allows me to take all of my educational experience as a teacher, as a staff developer, as an administrator,
Excuse me.
even in higher ed, preparing those who want to go into educational leadership, and being able to take all of those experiences and those connections and be able to serve students, families in the community. And so that's kind of where I'm sitting right now.
See, I told y'all she has done a myriad has had a myriad of roles in education, and just brings such. That's one of the reasons why I wanted you to join us and share in your expertise, because you, from where you sit and the places that you have sat, the seats you have sat in, you have such a unique perspective because of your varied experience, right? So you've held leadership roles like a principal, assistant principal, all the things that you named. So in each role, you've had to control your narrative, right? Can you share a time, right? Because especially as Black women, honey, we have to control our narrative and not have other people dictate what that would be for us. So can
Mhm.
you share a time when you overcame a significant challenge? And what was your leadership mindset that helped you take control of that situation in any one of the roles that you've had?
Mhm. So I'm so glad that you asked that, Dr. Demir, because to your point, we do have to control our narrative. And one thing that I found out, being in the spaces that I'm in, and especially now that I have this doctorate, right? It
Yes,
changes.
can we talk about that too? Yes.
Changes a little bit. Let me tilt my head. It changes a little bit, right?
Mhm.
How people perceive you or see you, what people think you are, or are not, your persona, and how people attempt to read you, right?
Mm,
All of that comes into play with how you show up in space,
mhm.
right? But I'm very unapologetic about being disruptive, right?
Beautiful.
That's my mission, right? Is to be disruptive, and disruptive is not a bad thing. It's about how do we change and intentionally change, specifically for me, to impact those who have been marginalized in the education space, right? Because at the end of the day, I am a Black woman who shows up in these spaces, and I am committed and charged to ensure that those who look like me succeed, because I understand the power of education, and I understand that now more than ever. What are we, about 27 days in
Yeah.
now? Well, no, about 10 days in. Now more than ever, it is important, it is vital, it is essential that we who are in these leadership spaces, that we are speaking, for those who don't have voice. And so, for me,
Yes.
yeah, for me, a big part of it is continuing to demonstrate excellence in
Mhm.
what I do. Um, Again, speaking truth, and being intentional about raising up issues when they need to be raised, and
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
asking those critical questions. Being the person to say, okay, so why are we doing this?
Mhm.
Have we thought about this? Well, you keep talking about these results. Let's name who these children really are, because this is
Right.
it's about a subgroup. Let's call, you know, Robbie, Bobby, Ricky, and Mike. Let's call their names out.
Right.
Let's talk
Right.
about who we're really serving, and not try to subcategorize it, or just put it under a little heading or header. And so, um, for me, it's again, not making it about me. It's always making it about the children and the families who I'm charged to serve, and always trying to bring the leaders, the staff that I'm around. So what are we doing, and why are
Yep,
we doing
yep,
it?
yep. That makes so much sense, and I agree with you 1000%. I think for our listeners, especially our leaders who, you know, stand in the same vein that you and I are standing in right now, right, and believe that too. I think especially when it comes to new leaders, the difficulty they have, because I'll speak for myself. Even though I've always believed what you are saying, when I stood in a leadership role, it was challenging for me because I was so unsure of Demia, the leader, right? I was so unsure of, if I say this, whose toes am I going to step on? So it took me some time to find my voice, right? Like you and I are speaking because we've been in this game since the 90s, the early 90s, right? So it's different think back to when you first became a leader. You didn't have that voice that you have right now, right? Like, can you share with us how you developed that muscle, and what were some of the things or that were either you were thinking about, or is it one specific incident that happened? How did you develop that muscle and find your voice to help you control the narrative?
Mm. So one way of helping to find my voice to control the narrative was intentionally seeking out models who were doing what I wanted to do. Right. So looking for other women who were in the educational space,
Hmm.
who were bold,
Yeah, yeah.
and in who they were and what they were about and what they were committed to. So one is like, seek out those who you want to be like and you want to emulate. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that has to be a mentorship mentee relationship. Sometimes it's just admiring from afar, right?
Right.
It's just picking up the nuggets as you see them. My pastor says some things are taught, other things are caught. Some of
I
it is,
love that.
you got to catch it because you got to be around that person who
Hmm. Hmm.
has what you want. That's one thing. The other thing was, I've had some great models of administrators. I've had some not so great models of administrators. And so it's learning what to do and learning what not to do, right? And
Hmm.
the more that you learn what not to do, that should shape how you do things better, right? And
Yep.
so taking those examples. And then the other piece is ultimately recognizing and realizing that I had to kind of create a tribe, right, of people
Mm.
who I could bounce off these
Yeah.
ideas. Like, I could actually role play with, I can actually strategize around these conversations. So even like in my role now, because it's such a very unique role, especially for my school system that I'm in, there's only 100 schools that are community schools. That's 100 people. And of those 100 people, the majority are not Black women, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I have a very unique affinity group of co-facilitators that we are constantly processing, right?
Hmm.
Going through things, sharing our war stories. You know, if we get wounded in battle, we're like helping to heal each other in the process. And that is so essential too, because sometimes as a leader, and you know this very well, especially when you sit in the principal seat, unless you're someone like myself in your school, only you as the principal knows what it means to be a principal,
Yep.
right? You don't
Yep.
really have your colleagues in the building to talk shop with and to, cry to or share your woes and moes with.
Yep.
You're
Yep.
seeking that out outside of your building
Yep.
as a resource. And so I would say for me, it was one, looking for models that I could emulate. Two, making sure I had that affinity tribe of people who I could talk to. And then just three, that taught and caught and just working it out, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
and just getting into my niche and into my space. And then I'll just speak to, because we're in the same age range, as you get older, there's something that like comes on you, like the Holy Ghost. As you start to get in your 40s and in your 50s, you start to speak with a different level of authority. It's
Hmm.
no more time for play. Like you really get serious about certain things. So I'll even say that as you get older, there's a different level of wisdom that you begin to acquire, and you understand that time is of the essence, that
Yes.
urgency.
Yes.
Oh, that's
Yes.
time to play. Like,
Yep.
let's
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. I love that. You just gave some concrete steps for, our viewers to really think about how you can develop and find your voice, right? So that you can control your narrative. I love the clarity in that. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So, in your role as a community coordinator, and even in other roles that you've had, because you've worn so many hats, Dr. Danielle. What practical strategies or tools have been most effective in addressing any, like, the student or the family concerns, or even staff, like even if you're wearing the principal hat, even staff needs? And then how can a school leader help support those strategies, right? That you're going to share with us.
So my mantra is relevant relationships produce radical results.
I love
Relevant
that.
relationships produce radical results. Um, Especially being in the principal seat, and that first year, I was the only admin.
Mm.
And we were in the same district. So we know what the nuances of that
Oh
district.
yeah. Yep.
Being in high school and secondary, there wasn't as many Black females in that space. Then I was considered in an alternative space, so that had a whole nother
Another
nuance,
layer. Oh yeah.
another layer to it.
Hmm.
But one thing, and people could say, "Oh, this is a good, bad, whatever." My whole time as an administrator, I never had a grievance. I always was available to my staff and my students, my families. My staff saw me do everything that everybody in that building did. So when the cafeteria people weren't there, I was cooking the chicken nuggets and the corn, and I had my hair net, and I was serving the kids.
I know that's right.
When the building service workers wasn't there, I was cleaning toilets and pulling trash. Um, if the secretary wasn't there, I was buzzing people in the door
That's
and good
right.
morning, good afternoon, good evening. If I had to go in the classroom and teach, I taught.
That's
Um,
right.
if somebody's mama was bringing them back because of a suspension and they were hung over and high, I still had that conversation with them and made sure that they respected their mama in front of me, because you're not going to disrespect your mama because you only got one,
That's
right?
right.
And so people I've always made connection with people. And the most irate parent, or the most indignant parent, the most parent on 10, those were my best parents.
Yeah.
Those were parents who would connect with me. I always feel like I'm relatable. I've been relatable. I've always met people where they are. And
That's
I
it. Key.
understand,
Yes.
yep, and I understand the value of relationship, because at the end of the day, families want to trust that their children are safe, protected, and are going to be educated by those who are serving in the school building. And that at the end of the day, I always wanted to make sure that families, especially those adults, knew your child is safe with me. Your
That's
child
right.
be okay. I don't have any physical children of my own, but any child who was under my care is my child. And so I was intentional. I continue to be intentional about that. And so for me, it's about relationships. It's about building trust. It's about showing my commitment and availability to the work. It's about taking the time to just have those small conversations.
Yes.
Uh, it, at the end of the day, especially when we talk about Black and Brown children, Black and Brown communities that have been marginalized, that have been impacted by systemic racism, that have ACEs and trauma and all of these things.
Yeah, yeah.
Families want to know that they can trust you.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. That's
It's about
exactly what it is.
trust, right? And once you show and demonstrate that trust, they will give you the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it is always about just building those relationships. And that's a key role of my job as a community school facilitator. And again, I'll go back to the uniqueness of the role. My job is to connect our families to the school. So most of my job is about being out, it's community
Yep.
school facilitator. It's being out in the community, connecting with families, connecting with businesses, connecting with organizations and partners, and how they can help us meet the needs of our students and our families. And then how can we grow together as a community? And so I'm out in the streets.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
also
yeah.
making those connections and communicating to people why it's important that you invest your time, your talent, and your resources in my school community and what
Yeah.
the benefit is going to be for you.
Yeah, I love that. I love how that you said, you meet people where they're at. And I think that is one of the challenges that we have right now, is that we're not meeting our staff where they're at. We're not meeting our teachers where they're at. Where it feels very often, especially with the school leaders that I work with, like there's this one size fits all approach. And it doesn't work that way. We're talking about differentiation for students. You have to differentiate for teachers. You have to differentiate for schools. One school is not going to have the same needs as another. So we have to be more innovative and meet people where they're at. I love that you said that.
Can
And
I
it just sounds like
piggyback off of something that you
absolutely, absolutely.
said, Mia? Not only just and meet people where they at, but I think that here's the other nuance that we are missing, that is causing us to not accelerate the way that we need to in public education. This is a service industry, right? And
Mhm.
so, one of the things that we do not teach our teachers how to do is create relationships with their students and their parents.
Yep.
That is a very big missing piece,
Oh yeah.
because at the end of the day, I could teach you curriculum all day long.
All day.
I could teach you how to effectively implement a lesson plan, but you got to come with some character, some
Hmm.
integrity. You got to want to be in those spaces and deal with those children, whoever
Hmm.
those children are. You have to want to engage with their families, not just use talking points and send a text message, but get to know who you're serving, right?
Yep.
It's like a doc. You don't want a doctor who doesn't want to know who you are as a patient,
That's right. That's
right?
right.
So why do we think that in education, teachers don't have to invest the time to get to know their students for who they are, whole child, and get to know their families for who they are, so that they can make those very unique and personable connections in
Yeah.
order to meet those children and families where they are to move them forward? It's all about relationships.
Yes.
No
Yes.
relationships, no academic outcomes. You have
Absolutely.
to have relationships to get the academic outcomes.
Absolutely. I mentioned this, I think last week. I said the same thing. I would rather have a teacher who has the ability to connect with students and develop relationships than one who is content heavy. Because I could teach you content, I could teach you how to teach, but teaching you have relationships with people, that's something that I can't teach you how to do. I can give you stems and things to do and say, but if it's not authentically you as a person, it's going to come across phony, right?
It's
So I would
mechanics.
hands down take a
Yeah,
teacher who has relationship skills, right?
right.
Yes,
Mechanics,
absolutely.
mechanics of teaching versus the heart of teaching. Two
Absolutely.
totally different things. And we are so caught up on the mechanics that this is a heart work. This is
Yep.
heart business,
And,
right?
and it takes time. That's
Yeah.
the thing too. It's like we have to slow down. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. When you slow down and you build those connections, you build the momentum that you need so that you can actually move the needle
Mm-hmm.
instead of going through the mechanics like you just said, right?
Right. And that's where the conflict comes in, right?
Yes.
Because
Let's talk about that. Yeah, talk
yeah,
about this conflict piece.
yeah, that's where the conflict comes in, right? Because you, you it's so many things, but one, when we talk about servicing, right? Because we're in a service industry,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're servicing people. They're not data points. They're not just numbers in a spreadsheet. They're not just subcategories. These are children,
Right.
right? And so at the end of the day, conflict comes into play when we don't um call things out for what they really are, and we try to make it so mechanical that we take the humanness out of education, and we really don't relate and say, this is who we're talking about, this is who we're touching, this is who we're impacting. And so in this role, yeah, there's a lot of conflict that pops up,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because again, one, this community school strategy is about equity. That's the heart of the strategy. And so if you are challenged by equity,
Mm.
we're going to
Mm.
automatically be in conflict,
Mm-hmm.
because this strategy is about making sure that those who have been marginalized are prioritized so that their needs are met, so that they can achieve academic outcomes.
Mm.
So if you got an issue with that, we got an issue
Right.
automatically out the gate. And
Right.
so that's where conflict definitely arises in the space that I'm in, because if you have a mindset that we don't really want to drill down on Black and brown children, we don't want to call that out, that we
Right.
are not supporting them the way that we need to, or we're not supporting their families the way that we need to, yeah, there's conflict.
So
And I'm
how do you deal with that? How do you, because we, like I said, y'all, Danielle and I have known each other for a long time. We were cut very much so from a very similar cloth, right? And so hearing you say that, for me, I automatically like, that was conflict for me. Like I felt something when you said that, that other people would have conflict with it. Like for me, I'm like, excuse me, what do you mean? So I said that to say that I know a part of you, your visceral reaction may be, wait a minute. But tell me, can you share with us how you deal with that? Like, how do you deal with the pushback that comes along with the conflict that exists regarding this equity piece in your role, like what with the work that you do?
So how do you deal with it? Well, one, you got to recognize it comes with the territory, right? There's
Valid
two
point.
types of conflict. Conflict is, when you look at the Chinese character for conflict, it is made up of two different characters in the Chinese language. One
Mhm.
character represents danger, and one character represents opportunity. So I want to start by saying that conflict shows up in one or two ways. It's either a danger or it's an opportunity.
Mm.
That's first and foremost. And so, as a disruptive leader, I'm always looking for the opportunity, right? And when I say the opportunity, meaning the ability to grow, to learn, to expand, to stretch,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
change, to experience some type of metamorphosis, right? And everybody doesn't want to change,
Yeah.
especially when you talk about systems that have worked better for some than haven't worked for others. And so
Hmm.
when you are coming into these spaces and you're asking these questions, or you are trying to remind people, hey, we're a community school. That means dot, 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 right? That's for me how I attempt to handle, and I'm not going to say attempt, how I handle some of those things. It's always, this is the why. Let me
Yeah.
bring the why back in front of you. It's
Beautiful.
always about the why, right? Why are we doing what we're doing? It's
Hmm.
aid equitable access to resources, to supports, to academic enrichment, expanded learning opportunities, and core, engagement, right? That's the why. That's why we're doing what we're doing. Now, what's your concern with that, right? I'm gonna ask those clarify critical questions. I'm gonna start drilling down. So do I hear you say that dot 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 dot, or what do you see to be the challenge with that,
Right. Hmm.
or or why is that seem to be a concern or issue, right? It's always to have the critical conversation, right?
Hmm.
As leaders in the education space, especially in the public space, especially if you are serving Black and brown children, you can't be scared to have the conversation that needs to
Yeah,
be had. You can't be scared. You can't walk in
that's
this
right.
with fear. You got to ask the questions that need to be asked, because at the end of the day, you're in the space that you're in to support the children and families under your charge.
That's
So
right.
you have to be willing to ask the questions and put it in front of those who you're serving with. And so for me, it's always going to be a conversation. Let's talk about that. Or can you explain that to me? Or can you tell me where you're coming from with that? Why do you think that? I need to know, because it also is chess for me. It's
Right.
chess checkers. I need to know how I'm moving and strategizing with you, without you, how dancing, playing this game, what's going on. So yeah, I for me, it's always the bringing it back to the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Ask
Right.
Having the conversations and asking the critical questions. And then again, at the forefront, um, this is about equity all day long. That's what this
Mhm.
strategy is. So we can't say we're community school if we're not helping our
Yeah.
sped population, if we're not
Yeah.
helping our
Yeah.
ELL population, if we're not
Yeah.
helping our children of color populations, like these are the marginalized groups
Yep.
that have been impacted systemically in education. This is why this strategy exists. This is our target group of focus.
Yeah. I love the very specific, like, clarifying questions. Again, to your point earlier about, meeting people where they are, you're asking these questions so you can get a clearer picture of their understanding. Like, where are you in understanding what's happening right now, so that I can meet you where you are to get you to a clearer place, right? So that you can have more clarity. I love that. Can you share with us a misconception that you think school leaders have about the role of a community coordinator or a conflict specialist? What are some misconceptions you think school leaders have or may have, and how can they shift that perspective to understand better and support the work that you do?
So I think one of the misconceptions is that we just out here to get you things, right? Just bring things into the school. So that might be school supplies, it might be shoes, it might be socks, it might be food, it might, you know, it's bringing you in stuff. The purpose of the community school coordinator, facilitator, whatever term is used in your school or your district, is several, right? And so one, it's about being a bridge and a connector between the schoolhouse and the community. It's about focusing on student, family, and community outcomes. It's about how are we making things better for our students, their families, and the community. It's about leveraging resources and partnerships, right? Part of the job is doing a needs assessment and finding out from multiple stakeholders what are the assets in the community and what are the deficits in the community,
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
can we address the deficits through partnerships and collaborations with businesses, with other nonprofits, with government, with other agencies. So how are we leveraging our relationships, our connections to bring more resources into the building? Part of this job is serving as a catalyst for change. Because if everything was going well and wonderful, we wouldn't need community schools. We wouldn't need the strategy, right? So it's about, we got to make a difference. We've got to change. We've got to make a shift. Another part is to facilitate leadership processes. And so in this role, this person should be a part of the admin team. They should be a part of the ILT. They
Good,
should be
good.
a part of the attendance committee. They should be a part of student support services. They
Yep.
should be a part of
Excuse
your,
me.
of,
Excuse
bless
me.
you. They
Thank
should
you.
be a part of your equity team, right? They are a thought leader in all of these spaces. And in these spaces, part of their job is to say, we're community schools. That means these are our priorities. This is how we should be implementing the strategy. This is how this all connects with what we do. And then also, it's to make sure that systems, processes, and procedures are in place so there's a continuum of services and supports, right? And so that
And
should
so
be,
you're saying the school leaders should build these systems and processes, or is it the community coordinator who they do it together in collaboration?
it's in collaboration, right? And so, like I know when we became principals and you took the ISLIC test, one of those standards, right, was about community engagement, right?
Yep.
And so basically, what this strategy is so great about it is that the community school facilitator coordinator gets to lift some of that off of the back of the principal,
Yep.
right? And
Absolutely.
gets do that work for them so that they can focus on total academics, right? Or those other big rocks.
Yep.
But mostly academic outcomes. We can kind of help facilitate the other outcomes, but we play a big part in academics too. But we're able to facilitate those other outcomes, and it makes the work easier and lighter,
That
right?
makes so much sense. So much sense.
Balanced. And
Yeah.
and again, for me, I will say some of my challenge, struggle, all these things. I'm fortunate. I'm unique. There are not too many people in this role who've been a principal or AP. So
Yeah.
I'm bringing another unique lens of, hey, I've been in those shoes. I know what that's like. Let me help with
Right.
this.
Yep.
But that also takes, depending upon who you with, some, people sometimes,
Yep.
get a
That's
little intimidated, all these other things, think you're trying to take their job, all that other, because it's not that. I know my lane, I know my ministry, I know my gifts, I know how to support leaders, because I've been doing that in other spaces.
right.
I just want our children and families to be successful.
Yeah.
So here's what I come to the table with. This is what I know how to do. Let me do what I do well.
Yep.
And we can work this thing together. And so that can be some of the conflict too, especially as a Black woman, when you show up in spaces and you have a resume with results. A resume with results.
Thing for some folks.
It
Absolutely.
can be it can
Mhm.
be it can be intimidating because it could cause conflict. It
Yep.
could cause challenge. So you're trying to navigate all of that too, along with doing the work. So yeah,
So it sounds like the first thing for any listeners, it sounds like the first thing as a school leader that you can do if you have if you're blessed to have a community coordinator or a similar role in your school, is to ensure that that person is on your leadership team, right? So that they're involved in the conversations and know what's going on. Hopefully you're doing that. If not, consider doing that. So that's another huge nugget that you can implement right away. I hope you're using that reflection guide and writing this stuff down.
Mhm.
So, Dr. Danielle, as someone with leadership experience at multiple levels, right? You just said assistant principal, principal. What advice would you give school leaders who want to align academic priorities with the wraparound services that community coordinators provide?
Mhm. What advice would I give? One, you need to create space where all of these major stakeholders and players are all at the table together. One of and you, again, you could speak to this, Dr. Demia. Sometimes we operate in such silos
Mm-hmm.
that we don't get to really see the total breadth and depth of services that are being provided to our students and families, because somebody over here is doing a little something and somebody over here is doing a little something and something's happening over here, but we don't get to see the intersectionality of how and the layering of supports that we have for students. And
Right.
so again, that's another space where this community school facilitator comes in place, because they should be one of the people that's housing that big grid, that war room, that chart, that spreadsheet. Well, Johnny is receiving, his family comes to the pantry once a month. They also he's getting ELA interventions, he's getting math interventions.
Yep.
Mom has received social work services. They have family therapy sessions, right? So now we're seeing all these touch points that's happening for Johnny. And so if Johnny makes gains, right, in ELA, it's not just because of the ELA pieces, right?
It's all
All
the
those other wraparound supports and services have made an impact on his gains.
Yep.
And that's the data that we're not picking up, right?
Absolutely.
And that's where having someone like a community school facilitator is essential, because they're looking at that whole picture of services. And so for those leaders who are on all the platforms, one, you need to be having a weekly check-in with your community school facilitator, right? That should be an automatic. That community school facilitator should be on all those major teams that I just said, right? Attendance, student support, ILT, your admin team, your equity team, because they are going to remind the school community regarding the strategy. And
Yeah.
then three, when are we bringing all of those teams together to dissect that data and all of those what I call touch points? What are
Right.
all the touch
Which
points
are
of how
data
we're
points.
servicing,
Mm-hmm.
yep, how we're servicing those students
Yep.
and those families? And then the last piece of it is the shared decision making team process. So the community school strategy also is an opportunity for all stakeholders to come to the table to talk about how we want to see the school improve and grow, how we want funding allocated, what we see as the priorities within a 3-year cycle, right? And so that facilitator is leading that team of
Yeah.
thought leaders that includes students, that includes families, that includes partners and
Yeah.
organizations. And so that's where all of that comes into play. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's allowing that person to actually lead, not looking at them as just an extra set of hands that's not teaching, but you are actually letting them lead systems and processes and procedures. And so you as a leader have to be comfortable with having other leaders in your building and
Yeah.
allowing them to lead, and um, making what they do a priority. And so if as a principal, you're not talking up the community school strategy, you are not creating space and place for that facilitator to lead or and to be looked upon as a leader, it creates detriment to the strategy,
Yep,
and
yep.
it creates detriment to that person, because then people don't perceive that that person and what they're doing is of value, and they don't recognize why they need to connect, interact, and engage with that person, and that they alone are not community schools. The school is community school, so everybody is responsible for the strategy.
Yeah, I love that. And it's inclusive. It's not, it takes a village, right? And so that role is specifically geared. It sounds like that role is specifically built for that purpose, is to bring the village together, right? No matter what it takes, is to bring the village together. I love that idea, and the idea of using, as you called it, the touch points, the actually data points. It's not just the ELA intervention that helped Johnny get better. It's, making sure that he comes to school on time, but by providing him transportation or whatever the other touch points are or were for him to be successful. So I love that you are pulling on that data piece, which is oh so important in everything that we do, but not to the point, like you said, where, and it's so funny you mentioned it, because I was having a conversation with a colleague today around feeling discomfort around us looking at students as numbers, because there's so much more than numbers. And I know it's a political frame in which districts are looking at numbers because it's tied to money, but it bothers my spirit every single time we do it. So I'm glad that you touched upon that as well. So looking at the time, I want to close us out. First of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for your time, your knowledge. I don't know if you all can tell. You should be able to tell by now that Dr. Danielle Green is a force to be reckoned with, and she knows her stuff, right? She is a scholar and is very has done this so well and has been doing this so long that she has it down to a type of formula that you can actually implement. And so Dr. Green, if you can share with people how they can get in touch with you and something that's coming up. Let's talk about the big thing that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. Come on now, my fellow. Oh, that's the other thing. We're sisters, and we're both Aquarius, born in February. So there we go. Tell us about the big thing that's coming up for you.
Yes, thank you again, Dr. Tamia, for being on your virtual stage and platform. And so I don't think I ever said Dr. Danielle Green, DRG Consulting LLC, otherwise known as Consult DRG. One of my specialties is conflict management. So I consider myself a conflict connoisseur, fearlessly facilitating tough yet critical conversations in multiple spaces and places. And so one of the ways to get in touch with me is my email is in my background there. It's drg@consultdrg.com. And in the month of February, I'm so excited. I have co-authored my first book, and it is with Dr. Kelly Dixon, and Forward and Insights by Chris V. Ray, JD, and it's called The Disruptive Leader: Building Relationships for Transformational Change. And so we talk about in this book the EDGE framework, which is a formula for how you can transform the relationships that you have in your organizational spaces to enhance the inclusive culture needed to disrupt the status quo. And so I hope that you stay tuned and on the lookout. You can follow me at Consult DRG on social media platforms. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And so I'm excited about my first book, and that is a whole nother conversation of how we got here. But again, it speaks to relationships. Had I not been connected to this person in another space, and then had I not made a post one day on October 24th, and she told me that sounds like a book, And 3 minutes later, she texted me. And 5 minutes after that, there was an invitation. And 5 days after that, we drafted the book. And now the book is coming out. And so relationships, the power of relationships is real. Being open to opportunity, and those doors being made available is real. And I'm a true testament of being disruptive and changing the status quo with how things are done, especially in the educational space. So I'm excited. This is
I'm so
great
excited for you.
news.
And I want you all to catch, she said, my first book, okay, which means more are coming. I know that's right, girl. We're going to be some book writing doctors. I love it. I'm
All the things.
so happy for you. Congratulations on the book. And I will definitely be getting my copy as soon as it drops. So make sure I'll connect with you and make sure that I get the link and all that information. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today or watching the replay. Make sure you hit me in the DMs for the link for the workbook associated with the Lead Beyond Limits. And we want to thank Dr. Danielle Green for sharing her time and talent and expertise this evening. And I will see you next Monday at Lead Beyond Limits. Danielle, hold on a second.